Well, good morning. It is a pleasure to be with all of you today. My name is Kevin Kiley. As mentioned, I'm president here at Area. I had the pleasure of working with a lot of your organizations previously. Our first company, AirWatch, was a mobile security, mobile device management company. If any of you were customers, I met a couple of you last night. We sold that company to VMware in 2014 after a lot of growth, and I hung around for about 2 years. Then myself and several others on the leadership team got together again and built a second company, OneTrust, if any of you are clients of OneTrust. OneTrust also grew very, very fast, went through a lot of scaling, in just a few short years had grown to about 14,000 customers. I stepped away about 2 years ago and have had a couple of interim gigs, but one of the things that we continued to work on in the background, myself and several others, was this idea of AI and how it would be able to impact the work that your organizations are doing. So I say all that just to set up where we are today and to tell you a little bit about the space. I'm going to take the next sort of 25 minutes here to talk about some of the key challenges that your organization is already facing or soon will be if you're not. We'll talk about a couple of examples here. I will try to keep this really informative and hopefully show you a few new things. And then at just the end, we'll do a couple of minutes on Area, our company. But this will not be a sales pitch, I hope, and I'll do my best to it. I also see a couple of people taking photos. You're welcome to do so. I'm happy to also share the slides. There's some good content here that if it's useful to you, just let me know. Let me jump right in, though, and let's talk about some of those challenges. I've been traveling this week. I started my week Sunday at another conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, almost the other side of the world. One of the largest AI conferences for enterprise technology, HumanX, with I think 8,000 or 9,000 people, and getting to talk on some of these key needs. The last couple of days I've been in London at another conference, and again, this is just so topical right now, and it's because many of you are starting to see these challenges. The first one that more and more I hear about is you're trying to demonstrate how these projects are performing. Your CFO is asking perhaps for some budgets. What are we expected to get and the money that you are putting into these? What's our return going to be? How do we track that? How do we forecast it? There are a lot of unknowns. The economics are shifting very quickly, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. But again, just this core blocker around how do we expect these projects to perform when so many vendors are coming at you today, each with their new AI-enhanced product, new models that are also showing a lot of promise, but again, very expensive. It can be really, really difficult to put all those considerations together and really be able to credibly talk about the returns that keep you from burning cash on this thing, all the hype right now. The other big challenge that I heard from so many was around expecting how we're going to find the investments for these. And I'll say from the outset, it is very easy to start small, get some quick wins, and start putting some score on the board. We'll talk about a couple of examples today of where that can happen, but I did want to begin by emphasizing this point. These don't have to be investments that break the bank or blow out your budget. The small incremental wins are the place to get started and build momentum, build comfort, and go from there. Some of these returns will be immediate and impactful. There are ways that you can, again, demonstrate to the organization, to your employees, but also to your leadership, that it is possible to very quickly drive some new efficiencies. And while some of the economics, again, can be a little bit murky, one of the key themes here has been how do we keep that productivity leakage from happening? Just because I'm able to respond to things faster or process a little more, does that necessarily translate into greater productivity? Or am I just going to have more time to go stand and have a coffee in the break room? Knowing where to measure and apply the right metrics to the right projects is key here to showing some of those quick returns. We'll talk a little bit today about orchestration and how this can really be an enabler. It is part of what we offer, but there are other products in the space that do something similar. But recognizing that there's going to be a lot of moving pieces here, and again, we'll spend some time on this morning. How do you keep all of them working in harmony? How do you make sure that we are driving the right impact across these various players and all the different moving pieces that are involved? getting some of the training and adoption to be an organic part of really driving the results here and getting the team behind it. And then lastly, my call to action here would be standing still is going to be more risky to your organization than doing something. So this idea of, again, fail fast, go out, take some quick experiments, and start showing that you can make this happen, even if not every project's a success, is going to be a far better path. Now, apart from some of the cost and economics of this, the other big blocker that we continue to hear about is security and the risk that's involved with deploying AI. We've already seen some big attacks this year. I think Gartner puts the number at north of $5 billion in damages last year from uncontrolled AI, perhaps information that wasn't intended to be shared, that was exposed through some sort of breach, whether it was, again, intentional or unintentional. Very often it is well-meaning employees. We've enabled Copilot to go out to SharePoint, but the fine-tuned controls that you have in other systems aren't there yet. So perhaps that Copilot instance is going to tell any employee what the executive compensation numbers look like this year. Or those sales figures that haven't yet been made public are now being exposed because anyone can go and ask the right questions. I see a couple of nodding heads, and I know there have been a lot of stories around this already, that most often these breaches or unintended security gap failures have been because somebody just didn't lock the AI down well enough. What we're only now starting to really see are some of the malicious attacks, and those are going to proliferate significantly this year based on a lot of analysis. You can expect that if you have deployed AI, that there will be new threat vectors coming at you. Prompt injection attacks have already gotten a lot of press, but we know that there's a number of companies that have seen jailbreak attempts, others that are being trained to manipulate the model. There are real bad actors that are catching on to this, and as much promise as we see for good with AI, know that it is just as dangerous for the bad guys, and that they're going to use this to superpower their attacks and finding new vulnerabilities to get into your organization. And I will say that across the deployment team, you will also see that some of the model makers are now presenting new risks for you. We all saw about a month ago with everything that came out with DeepSeek. Very, very powerful. This really shook up the industry. And if your teams haven't looked at it, they should. There are ways to securely deploy it. But knowing that the hosted service carries a tremendous amount of risk for you. If anyone's looked at the terms behind me, you'll see that it is littered with all sorts of concerning language. Not only is there no commitment to your privacy or the confidentiality of the data that you're sharing with it, you're going to find that there's no indemnification. So anything that's happening that might create some litigation, you're going to be left to defend yourself. And the costs and the risks here, of course, are pretty significant when we're talking about something that's powerful, particularly if it's hooked up to key systems of record across your organization. This is a major exposure point, and again, we're in the early stages of it. Now, as I said, there are ways to take DeepSeek and other open source models and securely deploy them, but the hosted service doesn't promise you any of those sort of commitments. They will be managing your interactions. They are very explicit about saying this, that they can track not only what is going into it and the data that you're sharing, but how you're sharing it, where it's coming from, what devices, et cetera. All of that is there. And again, no commitment to protections around data transfers. So your own legal obligations are likely at risk if you're using any of these services. Now, early days here, we're going to continue to see more players. And as these new systems proliferate, and many of them will be very powerful, you're going to be under pressure from your business to make them work, to make them deploy successfully, and most importantly, securely. So we'll talk more about this today as well. Other security threat vectors, though, happen across the production cycle. So as you're preparing the data, know that there's huge risk here from data poisoning. Again, this may be intentional or unintentional from your teams, but it will have tremendous impact on how the models perform and what the AI actually puts out. Data theft here is also a big one. If we're loading that sensitive data in, we need it there because that's how we really create value out of using the AI model. But it does create a risk of exposure here that anyone else can find ways to get back to it. What did you train the model on? And with that, the model itself is potentially at risk. Your competitors may be looking at this across the globe and understanding that you've built something here that is very capable, but within there, you've trained all of your business practices, that sensitive information that is so vital to what's made your company successful. The infrastructure that you're maybe using can also carry risk. Have we looked at how it's being secured? This is an expansion of your perimeter, ensuring that their inference is secure and that you've got robust controls around there to not only validate it at the time of deployment, but then on an ongoing basis, somebody is continually monitoring this. And then as we saw with the DeepSeek example, uncertain model provenance, where is this coming from? Who built the model? What might be under the surface there that could create risk for us, that could create potential points of exposure? Finally, as you move these systems into production, lots of other concerns here around data leakage, the denial of service attacks as they become inundated, prompt injections I mentioned before, insecure tool calls, and then probably the biggest threat in production right now is the one that you're already seeing or maybe not aware of. Your teams are using these tools. Some of them may be sanctioned, many of them aren't. And when you really start looking into this, we find that most companies will uncover that, hey, the marketing team is buying this one tool. And they're putting it on a company card, perhaps. So there's no PO, there's no record of it. They've been building projects with it. They're very happy, but they haven't validated the controls or the security around it and what level of access it's now getting. You may have other systems that you do get from strategic vendors. But again, have we locked those down? Have we properly provisioned them to make sure that the right controls, roles-based access, et cetera, has all been implemented as part of that? Shadow IT and shadow AI more specifically is one of your greatest exposures today. So again, looking at that across the organization, identifying those pools of where it's happening. There's real innovation here, and again, it's valuable. Your business needs it. You're under pressure to deliver it, but there are ways to bring that under control and really have some system of mechanism around controlling it. Beyond all this, of course, your brand and the risk that AI presents is another major concern, looking at how these algorithms may perform and the bias that might be represented underneath. The output, are we actually providing quality answers? Is somebody continually validating this? I've talked a little bit about misinformation in the training data and how that can poison the system. Obviously, lots of risk for sensitive information being published here and your exposure under GDPR or other privacy regulations around the globe. Knowing that there is going to be very sensitive information that could be put out from these. And then lastly, errors or flat-out hallucinations. Again, having a way to monitor and log these to ensure that you're maintaining a high-quality output and that the model doesn't start to deviate over time, evolve in a way that would present answers that could be damaging to the brand or worse yet, create some sort of a data breach. The big concern, though, is one we haven't talked about yet, and that is the elephant in the room, I would say, change management. Knowing that this space is going to evolve so quickly, and that we've already seen that. Week to week, there are breathless reports about which model is now the leader and how much more efficient and how fast it's going to be. Yesterday, Google made a number of big announcements. You can be assured that there'll be more from someone else this week around how quickly they're evolving. Again, I would come back and say that all of you in this room will be under pressure to find ways to deploy other models. Most organizations I speak to start with Copilot or OpenAI, and you may have an agreement with Microsoft that gives you some level of comfort, but over time, it's not going to be adequate to just rest on that one provider. You'll be pushed to look at these new tools, whether it's the other big guys, Anthropic, Mistral, et cetera, or one of the million-plus models that are now out on Hugging Face. They're adding about 6,000 to 8,000 per week. And again, a lot of these models are going to be really powerful for your business. These may be things far removed from doing large language, optical models, et cetera, that could really be useful for your business. Finding ways to not only support them in a secure way that you can trust, but maintain them and manage them as this pace of change becomes more and more significant. You will be overwhelmed by the number of models that your company has to support. This is not a monolithic science project that you can just rest on one provider for. You have to be able to support that diversity to really get the power out of it. And you see that across even the big leaders, the pace of change is significant here, if the slide will load, how quickly they're moving past one another. The examples here on the screen, these are from earlier this year. The numbers have gone off the chart more recently. And again, it's not just going to be the names that you see here. There will be other entrants to this market. They are constantly coming. and they are really doing impactful work with their models. But all of this just introduces more risk and more overhead for you to manage as you try to bring these into your organization and apply some level of control around them. So again, I'm happy to share all this afterwards. I know the slides loaded a little slowly here, but watch the space and how it'll continue to change. Beyond wanting to move to the latest and greatest and harness all that power, you're going to find that you're also being pushed off of the model that your teams might have deployed 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, weeks ago. We're seeing such a rapid deprecation cycle here. I spoke with a Gartner analyst just a couple of days ago, and they were explicit about saying they've never seen in 25 years of being an analyst a space that has moved as fast as this. That model that your team was so excited about as the centerpiece of this new app that they launched or whatever the service is, that model may be gone in a matter of 6, 8, 12 weeks right after you've built it. And having a way to move off of these and move on to the latest and greatest, whether it's the same provider or switching entirely, again, will be a core need. This is costly. It can cost you time and money. Having a way to dynamically move between them will become increasingly important because that pace of change is only going to accelerate. And then I mentioned the economics of this, and I think it's very important to talk about a couple of examples here. If you had built that cool app for your team, for your customers, last year on OpenAI, and you started with ChatGPT in the 01 release, you were paying about $15 per million output tokens, about $60 per million output tokens, 15 for input. In the very next release, subsequent to that, that price dropped to $10 per million input tokens, and $15 per million output tokens. Massive change. And it only accelerated from there. In the next release of 4.0, you saw that go down to $2.50 per million input and $10 per million output. And in most cases, this model is probably overkill for what you need. This is 1 trillion parameters. It's massive. It's very, very powerful. And of course, they've since gone well past it. Most organizations for your enterprise use cases can use the mini version, which is even a fraction of that cost. We saw the price go down to 15 cents per million input tokens, 60 cents per output token. So you see, if I had gotten locked in on this first version and we sort of took our eyes off things, forget the deprecation, you're paying exponentially more than you need to for the same level of quality and accuracy. Having a way to route between these will be very important. This is just one vendor. As you start to mix it up with others, you're going to see that that becomes even more critical. So as we look at a real example here, and I'll just illustrate this quickly, most of you start with that single chat application and maybe then get comfortable enough to publish it to the web. We do that Copilot trial because we're a Microsoft shop, and that leads to a lot of interest. So we start tweaking it a little bit more with maybe a consultant or a third party to have a custom approach. There's some added cost, but some added value that comes out of this. Now we're embedding that AI through other vendors. They're bringing it all into your building with their new tools. We've got more chatbots proliferating across the organization. And this is where you'll start to need some level of orchestration. This is what the theme today is finding a way to coordinate between these, make sure that we've got some level of management. That Copilot rollout may be expanded, and we see it grow across the business. Now we've got other point solutions coming in that are AI native, but they're doing one little function within the organization. And now I've got these sprawling across the estate, and many of these that will now need to be managed on top of that. A lot of good stuff that's coming out of this, though, of course, good creative ideas. Your employees are seeing the power and what they can deliver. A lot of really interesting ideas being proposed. We're embedding these agents and doing some level of orchestration across the workflows, which again adds a lot of value and power. And ultimately, getting to some level of real orchestration will be key here as your endpoint. I'll illustrate this with a little more detail by talking about maybe a real example. Perhaps you started with a single chat application, and that might have been an OpenAI at the core of it in the example I just mentioned. If this was successful, great. We've now launched multiples. There's interest across the business, and you're using these in new ways. So we've got 4 or 5 of these projects running. Well, even within that, those are going to start to splinter. As I mentioned, the deprecation cycles and how quickly new releases are coming out from any one of these vendors, never mind the million of offers that you have. So we've got different versions that are all upgrading on their own schedule. They all need their own maintenance. They all have their own economics. That's a level of management. If we now start to diversify and bring in other providers, this picture starts to get really complicated in multiple ways. We also want to link in our data sources. To make the AI powerful, of course, it's got to feed off of your data to really deliver. So now I've got more pieces to manage. And within that, I want to tie into core applications, perhaps Salesforce or others that need to be part of this to really make it effective. So I've got different control points here that have to be managed and maintained, and the overhead that comes with those. I also want to layer in memory objects. If you're not familiar with the term, this is the more recent data of who am I interacting with and what history do I have with them, what questions have I answered previously that I start fine-tuning to. All of this is great. It's delivering a lot of power and a lot of value across these different models, but I want to make sure that all these things are also writing back to those systems. So it's not just a one-way sync. I'm now feeding this information both ways, and I've got multiple points of failure that are starting to appear across this as we maintain and keep up with it. If I then want to do a little fine-tuning or customize some of those prompts even more, it just becomes even more fragile. And the picture I'm trying to paint here is how quickly this will become a very, very complicated estate for your organization to manage. That you'll have all of this under one system. It will become an imperative. You have to have some level of orchestration, and that's what those sort of forward-leaning organizations are already seeing right now, that this is just untenable. That is a bit of what we offer here is AI orchestration. As I said before, there are multiple products out there. If you've talked to Gartner, they refer to this as their TRISM sandwich. Having these levels of control, understanding that the AI is going to be everywhere, you're going to need some way to secure it, demonstrate evidence that you've done the right things, but also provide for the ongoing management. This will be a tremendous amount of evolution, and that pace, as I keep saying, is going to just accelerate over this next year ahead. Hence the need for some level of orchestration. Orchestration should provide a gateway for controlling all this, giving you a way to not only see where everything is, but how it's working, what changes are being made, who's accessing it, what data is going in and out, providing the audit log, all the observability, but also a way to build and develop so that your teams can go out and quickly pull in a model, pull in those data sources without having to know how to code it all together. The more you can democratize this across the business, the more power you're going to get out of it. So these are what I would consider to be core capabilities around how we manage the lifecycle of the models, the security, the governance, the guardrails to provide the trust and ensure that this is all working in a way that is sustainable and, again, something that you know you can have faith in, not creating a data breach. Behind that, a number of agents that you can build within these. And these are some example use cases on the screen behind me, but recognizing that every department should have some role that an AI agent can play for them. This is where you'll get some of that immediate value. When we talk about quick wins, of being able to go in and find use cases at a departmental level of how we can quickly move to deploy AI in supporting the way that your workers are doing their jobs today. Again, this is a smattering of examples. We've got about 700 of these today in our product that are shipped right with right out of the box that are available to customers to immediately go in and start supporting some of the work that their teams are doing. And here you see, again, a cross-section of some of these, making it very easy for employees to go in and find the agents that can support their work, those assistants that can help them be more effective at what they're doing. This list continues to grow. As I say, I think today we're at about 700, but there are many more out there. And you're going to find a number of examples if you go online from other companies that are also building out some of these capabilities. So it's a complicated picture. There's a lot of risk that comes with it. But this AI-enhanced picture behind me says it all. The juice is worth the squeeze, would be the net of this. This is something that can be immensely powerful for your business and your organization. You all realize that. It's a matter of getting in tune to what's going to come at you. The data that your company is always relying on has been your most valuable asset. That's going to continue to be the case. But knowing that all of this change that is coming and that it's going to bring a lot of new challenges, a lot to support across your organization, the data integration, the models, the prompts, the tuning, all of this will become critical, especially the security and governance with it. So this is sort of the point to wrap up on, is understanding that all of this will become part of your strategy, having that platform in place just as you prepared to deploy, again, maybe it was mobile compute or cloud or any other technology over the last couple of decades. You're going to need that same level of a control plane for all the AI that's coming into your organization. That orchestration level will become critical. I mentioned our company Area offers a lot of these capabilities. Again, we are a relatively new company after we started building this about 2 years ago, came out of stealth maybe 5 months ago, last fall, and have been growing very quickly since then. We are based, co-headquartered between London and Atlanta with offices around the world, so we've got a good support footprint to work with your teams anywhere they may be. We are, as I say, growing very quickly today at about closing in on 300 customers and outpacing the growth, I'll note, of where we were with AirWatch and OneTrust at this point. So we're very excited to be here and hope to connect with some of you today. If you do have questions or you want to learn a little bit more about our product, for any attendees of the conference, we are going to be making a special offer to let your teams go out and effectively have a free sort of set of experiments with the product. On the left here, you see this 5 use cases. I know there are a number of companies out here that charge $1 million per use case. We're going to be providing 5 of these for free for any attendees this week if you want to speak with one of our sales team. That is licenses for your teams for the next 5 months, as well as a bucket of hours for support and consulting on any projects you might be working with. So this is truly a no-strings offer. If you are looking at any of this or want to talk, please know that this doesn't come with any obligation. The other gift, we'll be making a donation of our education program to any schools. If you have an educator in your life or a school that your children attend, again, please see one of us at throughout the day today, and we'll be happy to make this offer. It is a great program that we've done for schools to help with educators, to help teachers with preparing their curriculums, their lesson plans, et cetera. And probably a little bit better than giving away yet another water bottle that you don't need or some other bit of swag. So 2 free offers here. Lastly, if you were taking pictures today and you want to get a copy of the presentation, there's a QR code here on the screen. Happy to share that with you. I know I'm just about out of time, but I'll be hanging around all day today. If there are any questions that I can help with or you want to talk a little bit more about your specific deployment, please come find me. Thanks very much for the time today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.